This is Leslie, and you're listening to The Interview with Leslie Heaney. It's hard to believe, but it was 50 years ago this year that Saturday Night Live made its debut on television. And there's a 4-part episode docuseries that's coming out this week on Peacock called SNL 50 Beyond Saturday, which gives us all a look inside the making of the show. Who knew that The Interview was also so timely? As my next guest is a 7-time Emmy winner from her work on Saturday Night Live, Lindsay Shookus. For over 20 years, Lindsay worked for and became head of the talent department at SNL. Not only did she have one of the most exciting, and as she would say, pinch me careers in entertainment, managing, booking, and discovering the talent for one of the greatest and longest running comedy shows ever on television, but she also learned a ton of important life lessons along the way. After leaving SNL in 2023, Lindsay's gone on to speak to thousands of people about these life experiences and about the importance of cultivating relationships with people during your career. Lindsay's also the co-founder of Women Work Effing Hard, a group connecting and boosting women. In this episode, Lindsay gives us a behind-the-scenes look of the production of SNL and shares so many amazing stories and experiences she had during her time there. We cover everything from her getting Snickers bars and vodka for the amazing Betty White, to discovering Kristen Wiig on a tape, to getting a boost to her career from Alec Baldwin, who went to Lorne Michaels to talk about how terrific she was. And we talked about all of the amazing life lessons that she learned from her time there, working in a really high energy 24/7 environment, and what it's like to kind of incorporate that type of work life with your personal life, and most importantly, your life while being a mother. Lindsay and I talk about how she approaches her life today, her work, and all the incredible projects that she's working on now. I absolutely loved taping this episode. I enjoyed every minute of my conversation with Lindsay. She's down to earth, she's hilarious, and she's incredibly wise. And I know that you'll love listening to her amazing stories about SNL and getting kind of that behind-the-scenes look at the making of that incredible and iconic show. But I think you'll also really enjoy some of the important life lessons that Lindsay learned from her time there. So with that, Lindsay Shookus. Lindsay, I'm so happy to see you. I'm so grateful to you for coming on the pod. It's
happy to be here, baby.
I can't wait to do a full behind the music on your incredible career.
VH1 behind the music.
I know.
Everyone's clamoring for it. We're ready.
So this is a sidebar, but I met Meatloaf in a bar. And my husband and I ended up spending hours with him, hours. And somehow, over the course of too many wines, I turned to him. I'm like, I want you to know you were my second favorite behind the music. You're my second favorite. Bon Jovi was my number one, being a native New Jerseyan. But anyway, he was terrific. I got the full backstory on Paradise by the Dashboard Light, which was the mayor of Dallas's daughter. I did ask him, you do anything for love, but you won't do that. What's that? He wouldn't tell me. So anyway.
By the way, that has to be like, you must tell this story quite a bit, right? That's gonna be like at a party. Are you like, guess who met Meatloaf?
Oh my God. I should use it more. I should definitely use it more.
2 truths and a lie.
I know.
I mean, it's like perfect.
I know he was great. He was great. But I'm so excited to talk to you. And I want,
Speaking of Meatloaf.
Speaking of meat, which is what his friends like me call him.
Yeah,
you can
course,
call him
obviously.
meat. Okay, so you graduate from UNC Chapel Hill, and how do you find yourself from there to SNL?
Yeah, it was, whenever I tell this story, I say it's pretty ridiculous. I graduated, I went back to Buffalo, where I'm from, for a few months to make some money as a waitress.
Yeah.
Had a friend who I was going to be my roommate in New York City, and I moved here without a job, and I was like, I'll just knock on some doors and find something. And I moved here Labor Day weekend, and by September 30th, I had a job at SNL.
So what door did you walk up to 30 Rock and knock on that door?
Door. No, I had done an internship in college and in publicity and film, and I stayed in touch with my boss. I always said the year of my senior year, I sent her cookies on her birthday. I had no money, but I made her chocolate chip cookies and I sent them on her birthday. And the fact that I remembered that, she was like, oh yeah, she liked me. And then she helped me get my in at SNL.
Stop it. Did she work for NBC
my old boss was like, she was connected in the industry. She knew somebody, she knew Jen.
Right. Okay.
Our mutual connection.
Okay.
Amazing. And so I went and I met with Jen, and I remember I always tell Jen was eating like a pita sandwich.
Yeah.
During my interview. And I remember being like, is this what interviews are? Like, I thought interviews were so much more like, sit behind a desk and answer questions. And Jen was just like eating this pita sandwich.
I just finished half a bagel, and I thought to myself, I really need to probably wrap this up before Lindsay rolls in with me, having cream cheese all over my face and between my teeth. So you walk into Jen's office, and was she looking for a particular?
No, Lauren was looking for like his fourth assistant at the time.
Okay.
And what I didn't know is they had already probably found somebody, but Jen was kind of meeting with me as like a favor. And so I talked with Jen. That's why it was very informal, pita sandwiches. And by the end, she's like, someone else might be looking for an assistant here. I'm gonna pass you over to somebody else. I met with the other person who was in the talent department at SNL. They had me meet Marcy Klein, who was the head of the talent department. And then a few weeks later, I started.
How does that work? Some people, do they come in unrepresented? Do they have agents? How does the talent find SNL and SNL find the talent?
You mean like cast members?
Yeah, all of the...
most people are represented. Like I would say, like it's very rare that someone would be hired without some sort of representation. Now, I will say it has changed in the sense that back then it was like we got VHSs. Like they sent us VHSs and it would come by an agent and you had to sign a release. Now it's like links and there's just so much online. You could find somebody online who's young and green and maybe they won't have an agent. It's pretty rare still though. So yeah, agents would send us stuff, managers, and we'd also go to comedy clubs and Groundling, Second City, UCB. And we'd get also a ton of recommendations from current cast members and current writers. And
didn't Megan Mullally, I saw some interview with Bill Hader, or maybe he was on Smartless or something, talking about she called
Lauren. Yeah. She called Lauren and was like, I think it was like her brother-in-law or someone in her family was in Bill's comedy group, and she saw it and she was like, not the person I'm related to, but Bill Hader.
Yeah, exactly.
And so she called Lauren.
But he also mentioned you in that interview.
Yeah, because I was the first person who called him. It was like Lauren was like, oh, let's pass this to the talent department. I'll never forget, I had this yellow Post-it note that had his name and his number, and I put it in my little composition notebook, and I called him and I was like, we want to bring you in to just meet with you.
Yeah.
And I kept all my notebooks, so when Bill left, I actually still had the sticky that was, and I actually put it in they were collecting things for him when he left. So I was able to give him the original Post-it note.
That is amazing. Was it call Bill?
It was just his name. It was in one of Lauren's assistant's handwriting. And so yeah, I called him. He said he was in the bathroom, and I was like, we want to bring you in. We just met with him, and then we saw him perform. And Bill was such an extraordinary talent that it was pretty obvious pretty quickly. But so everybody has a different version of how they got to SNL. Some it's like Pete Davidson, Bill Hader told us about Pete Davidson, versus Leslie Jones, Chris Rock called, versus Vanessa Bayer, we saw her perform, versus Kate McKinnon was seen on a tape, on a link. So everybody has a different story.
So give me a time frame for when you started working with Marcy Klein.
So 2002, I started working in the talent department, and I worked with her and another woman named Ayala Cohen, who was kind of right beneath Marcy, and they kind of showed me the ropes. And really it was it's pretty gut. You watch so much of these tapes.
Yeah.
You watch them over and over, and you'd think oh my God, how fun. But a lot of it's not very good. A lot of it very quickly you're like, oh, this isn't good. And so you kind of just go through and you're trying to pull out things that seem like they're special. And then those are the ones I would show my boss. Things that were
so you would was that your first that was your entree into that department? You would start kind of culling through all of these tapes and...
Yeah, well that was, and then the casting was really a small part of the job. Really, the talent department's also just dealing with the hosts, the musical guests, and then all the experiences throughout the week, anything talent related. So my first day, I always joke about my first day, again, first job out of college, my first day, I met Matt Damon because he was the host that week. And 4 days later, I got to watch Bruce Springsteen perform or rehearse for his musical performance. And I remember being like, how is this a job? This is what? And the funny, I always laugh, the funny thing is it's definitely a job. I worked I worked so hard at Saturday Night Live. I worked the hours I worked, the time, the energy, the stress. But it was a pretty phenomenal, way to get your sea legs in show business for sure.
Oh, it was so exciting. And I just have my own, I live vicariously through Jen, obviously, and I know a little bit about your schedule. You being in talent had a whole other obligations and stresses in terms of having to be there all the time, but she was there all the time.
Yeah. No, I lived there.
Yeah.
I lived there. I also met my ex-husband and I met on my first day at SNL. So I not only lived there and all my friends were there, I also met the person I ended up marrying, and me and my husband at the time were there, and we had offices next to each other. And then we had a daughter there. We really had an SNL life. At our wedding, it was 70 people from the show, because it was everything to me.
Yeah.
I didn't have time for anything else.
Yeah. I was going to say, you're not going to meet somebody at a bar
No.
when you're at SNL. Okay. I forgot about that part. I wasn't really thinking through so much that it's not just obviously just looking for new talent and cultivating the talent that's there. It's handling all of the guests that are coming on.
And I would say the majority of it is the opposite. It's maybe it's 15% casting for new cast members, because that really happens in the summer when things are on hiatus.
Okay.
The rest of the job is really talent relations, booking, making sure you've seen all the movies and all the shows, and you go to a million concerts to make sure you know what's the hot new artists you want to book and if they're good live, and then dealing with all the problems and the talent producing throughout the 6 days of the show. So that was really the focus of my job when I was there.
So you mentioned Matt Damon as your first guest, right? So he's coming on that week. Maybe he's got a big movie coming out or whatever.
Yeah.
Do the writers have the schedule for the next, 6 weeks, 2 months to kind of be able to anticipate who's coming on? Or is that all kind of happening?
It really does happen the week of. People don't believe it, but you could let's say, you might have a reoccurring sketch that you like to do, a sketch that, you've seen before. Kristen Wiig, one of her, the Target lady, let's say.
Yeah.
And she might be oh, I want to do a Target lady. And she might be able to look at the next, however many hosts we have booked. And we didn't always have them all booked. But she'd be oh, who would be really fun? I want to do that with, Ray Romano. I don't know why that was one of my early hosts. And so she might save it. I'm going to do that for Ray Romano in 4 weeks. But other than that, it really was, they made Monday the host would come in at 5:00, and that was the start of the show. And then the writers would start writing, and everything was created within that basically 5-day period.
Oh, so the host is part of that creative process the entire week.
Yeah, the entire week. They are a big part of it.
And you don't have to name names, but I'm sure there have been times when the host is there day 2 and you're oh geez, I don't know if this is gonna pan out.
I will say I found in my experience of 20 years that I was often pleasantly surprised. Even if people had a reputation for being kind of hard to work with, you come into SNL and you are putting yourself out there. It is a live show. There's not even a 5-second delay, and you are doing something that you've never done before for the most part. So you need people to help you. You need them to like you and to pull for you, and you need everyone to kind of rally around you. So typically people were on good behavior. Once in a while you'd see someone on Tuesday or Wednesday and you'd be oof, they're not probably gonna be very good. Or they're kind of a jerk. But I would say that didn't happen very often, the jerk part. Sometimes you'd be this is gonna be rough. We're gonna have to really help them, because think about it, it's a skill set. Live comedy where you're doing 10 different, characters or voices and impressions, who does that? Very few people do that.
But then you'll get some people that are athletes, right? I don't know if I'm thinking of Peyton Manning or Eli Manning, but one of them was almost great.
Peyton was amazing.
Yeah.
And it was such a surprise. It was, I love Peyton. I love both the guys, but it was the best. He came in, and before he came to SNL, I think everyone kind of thought he was a little bit boring, honestly. Yeah. And then since then, everyone just he was the greatest surprise. And the best part is he didn't feel any pressure. He didn't feel, I remember asking him, because he was this ain't my day job. You know, I got to go back and I got to throw footballs and I got to be great on the field and try and get another Super Bowl ring. I don't have to be good at this. And it ended up being that he was great. And I think it definitely changed the trajectory of the commercials and the things he's done, based on
right. Sort of getting him, seeing that he was out of his comfort zone and he totally performed.
He's so
funny.
You
know who else is, I mean, there's so many obviously amazing guests, but I'm also curious about some of the pre-tape stuff, like Justin Timberlake's Dick in a Box is one of the greatest. It's one of the greatest. I mean, I just love that entire event. I thought, so is that happening that week too? Or is that like?
I tell you that, I mean, I wish I could remember exactly the thing, but it was not a thing until Thursday night. Like it wasn't this big idea they had. I really think, and the guys have definitely talked about this in press, like they didn't really have any idea. And Lauren was like, no, you got to do one.
Yeah.
I remember sitting in Lauren's office, probably with Jen, outside of the office, and like the guys having to go in and talk to Lauren, and like Justin and Andy coming out and being like, I guess we'll try it. And that was like Thursday at 6.
Oh my God.
And then you film all day Friday. You know, you really film like a 20-hour day on Friday. And then the director and the editors edit for 20 hours straight. And then you see what you saw. I mean, it is true chaos, and it makes no sense. And yet it is at the heart of the magic of SNL. Because I think if SNL had 4 weeks to do a show, it wouldn't be as good.
You know,
you lose the Lauren always used to say, like, you overthink things if you have too much time on your hands. And so there's something in the fact that you have to do it. You don't have a choice. I remember saying to somebody, God, you know what it was? It was Chadwick Boseman, who was the most wonderful, incredible actor. And he was such a joy to be around. And I remember him on Saturday at like 5:00, just being like, I'm done with rehearsal. So that's it. Like, you know, we have a dress rehearsal in the live show. And he's like, he kind of looked at me like,
yeah.
And I was like, you know, you have spent your whole career like spending 6 months, 8 months preparing for roles.
Yeah.
You have been given as much time as you need. Like, this is all the time you need to prepare for this.
Yeah.
This is a totally different thing. And like, you know, you don't need to know the backstory of each of these characters. You don't need, it's just like, I always make the joke of like, fart doctor. Exactly. We don't need to know where he comes from. You know, does he have a sister? Who cares?
Oh my God.
And you know, but that was quite often the thing of like, oh my God, I cannot believe I've only had, and don't forget, they don't start rehearsing sketches on their feet in a studio until Thursday. So you rehearse Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, and that's it.
I've been to, Jen was, so great and had us to a rehearsal once. We went to a show once. I mean, so it is incredible how it all kind of comes together. But you were mentioning giving the pep talk on Fart Doctor, but that is one of the things that's what
I'd like to be known for.
Exactly.
Put that on my tombstone.
Yeah, exactly. That's your bumper sticker.
Yeah.
I coach and talk about Fart Doctor, but that is something that all talent and people that know you talk about it. One of your like incredible gifts is making the guests feel comfortable. You know, and that's part of why they're able to do what they do is by you kind of, you know, teeing it up for them in such a way that they're able to get out there and make it work, make it happen.
Yeah, I think that became like a skill set for me, is like making people feel confident. And I think this is kind of still what I do in my next chapter, which is like creative problem solving and figuring out how to make people feel confident and like they can do anything.
Yeah.
You know, and helping them even if they're nervous or sick or scared or unsure, like, no, you're going to do this and you're going to get out there. And I mean, it was a really beautiful experience to get to like go through that with so many different people. And it really bonds you.
Yeah.
You know, it really, really bonds you to somebody because it's just such an unusual life experience.
Well, unless they're, you know, our oldest daughter she's at Interlochen Arts Academy. She wants to be an actor and she started the improv group there. Anyway, and she's all these auditions coming up at schools. And she's like, you know, my friend went to Carnegie Mellon and they're like, you've got to be a walrus. She's like, I'm like, are you ready for that? She's like, oh yeah, So if you're in that space, like if you're a comedian or you do improv, like but for a lot of these people, to your point, they're on movie sets, they're preparing, they have acting coaches, they know backstory. It's a totally different experience than what they're doing on SNL. Okay, so you go in, Jen introduces you to Marcy Klein, or the woman that works with Marcy Klein. Mm-hmm. When do you meet Lorne Michaels, and what is that like?
You know, what's funny? I don't remember. It's like, I don't remember because, it's like when you start the show, it's not like they're like, hey, now go meet Lauren Michael. I wasn't working for Lauren. So like, there was no like, I'm sure Marcy like probably was like, Lauren, meet my assistant. I don't remember the moment, but I do know the couple things that led to him like knowing who I was that Marcy like believed in me. Yeah. And I think she was talking about like, oh, it's so nice to have a great assistant, whatever, something like that. But the one of the big things was like Alec Baldwin, who hosted maybe my second season, maybe my second season probably. And I remember him being like one of the first people who was like, what's your deal? Tell me about you. What do you want to do? Like, and we got to know, and I remember him saying something to Lauren and being like, she's special. And like, you need to take note of her. And so that, that helps when people are talking about you in that kind of way, people pay attention. And so and then slowly Marcy started giving me more and more to do and trusting me to be around more and more talent. And then Lauren started taking note. And then I just kind of started becoming much more part of the material. Like people, you just would see me, I was always there. And the cast trusted me and liked me. And so it just became, I became part of the fabric of the show.
Have you seen the movie Saturday Night yet?
I haven't.
So I just watched it.
What do you think?
I thought it was good. But it was funny because the actor who played Lauren, the cadence of how he speaks and everything is almost a caricature. I was just like, this guy's doing a great job. But because he's such an icon, I would think when you meet him for the first time or you have that kind of contact with him, I'm sure after you've been around him a bunch, it kind of all sort of seems normalized, but you're like the voice and the whole, I don't know. It's just, he's such a presence.
I'm sure there was listen, SNL was many people, it was a big part of my high school. I just remember like sitting there and like I loved when they did like backstage monologues and you got to I loved when Lauren was in the show. I remember thinking that when I was a kid. So I'm sure there were so many pinch me moments though. Yeah. It wasn't just Lauren. I was just like, I was a girl from Buffalo, New York who had very little show business experience. And all of a sudden it was like, I was doing things I couldn't even believe. I didn't even know these were jobs. And all of a sudden I was just like spending time with all these amazing people who I'd looked up to or who I'd seen on the film screen or musicians and so everything was a pinch me moment. Everything I did was a pinch me moment. And so Lauren was part of it. But I think it was like once I started to become like, I started to get promoted and I was doing more with him. It was really cool to get to learn from him and be close enough to really like pick up on how he produced the show. And that really, that's when it started to really click for me. So when I got to like learn things from Marcy, learn things from him and see how it comes together.
Well, I thought it was really interesting what you said about Lauren saying that if you had more time, it wouldn't be the show that it is. That part of the magic and the creativity is that build up and having it be such a short period of time and that whole process that he laid out.
Well, I remember like specifically SNL hosts, like we would keep them so busy on Fridays. They would work. Kim Kardashian, I remember like on her show, she's like, I worked a 22-hour day. We would keep them busy. And yes, it was because they had to rehearse 8 sketches. Yeah. And then they probably had to do 2 film pieces. But also, there was some kind of background to like, if they're not busy, they're going to start overthinking things. Right. They're going to start like, oh my God, is this sketch funny enough? I'm not funny here. We always used to laugh at like when people have time and they can overthink a sketch, they start being like, oh, we should add things. Like I need a mustache in this sketch. Right? Men would add mustaches and women would add braces, and you'd be like, you don't need.
By the way, adding braces, I didn't even think about that. Your prop room.
I can in my head think of so many women hosts who added braces, and then like Lauren would be like, why does this person have braces? They don't need braces.
Just because it just is
because you get nervous. It's such a like you are so out of your comfort zone. Even if you're an actor, even if you're a comedian, you're still like pushing yourself to the limit. So you just start being like, what's gonna make it the best? Braces, a handlebar mustache.
Yeah, exactly. So you mentioned Alec Baldwin. Is there another host or one host, or maybe it's too hard to pinpoint just one, but that really stands out in your mind as one that you kind of loved working with? Or
it's like I could go
the
on
list
for
could
days.
Go, yeah.
Like Melissa McCarthy. We can go through all the cast members that I love and that were like dear friends, but like hosts like Melissa McCarthy, Emma Stone, Tom Hanks, Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. I literally like, there's so few that I don't love and appreciate. Issa Rae, Adele.
Have you written a book?
No.
You should.
You should see my apartment is many Post-it notes. I have so many. I look like I look like a beautiful mind. You know, someone's like, what is this one? You know, it's like
you're
Katy
like
Perry, long shoot, you know, homeless man. And I'm like, oh, that's a story for another day.
You're like Carrie from Homeland. Yeah. You need to get, by the way, you should, but you should.
My girlfriends are all like, hey, are we going to wrap up this whole beautiful mind thing soon? It's been years. But I love it. And now, especially now that I'm doing a lot of speaking, it's nice to be able to like look up and see, just also like reminders of like these beautiful, I mean, every single thing is like an incredible memory. It's just like, it's really cool.
But I think you could take all these great experiences that you had and marry it into what the work that you're doing now about the lessons, like, you know, whether it's you sending, you know, the birthday gift to your first boss or Alec Baldwin being gracious and, you know, mentioning you to Lauren, you know, all these great things.
It turns out you actually have to write it.
Yeah. So, no, I know.
So that would be the only problem right now. But yes, I think, have you talked to many people in my life who are they feeding you this? No,
I just literally, I mean, listen, I come up with these great ideas on the fly. I'm
first
just,
one who said it.
But I do have some ghostwriter friends. We can talk offline, but I really think these are such interesting, because you're seeing all these people and really vulnerable, you know, states, and just sort of, I think it's just an interesting lesson for people to know that even if you are Kim Kardashian, you can, you know, find yourself and pushing yourself and trying something new and all that stuff.
I have to tell you, and the majority of, I don't talk about the bad stuff. Like I wouldn't, I don't talk about the tea that people, like that's not what I would ever talk about, but it's like, it was the coolest and greatest experience of, I mean, obviously learning, but just like understanding people and their needs and their desires and how to build connection. I mean, it was just like, I'm so grateful. I can't even believe I got to have that because it's just the coolest.
I also was thinking about you as I was, you know, researching you for today's conversation, that like you have so many people who really owe a lot of their career to you, and then seeing them, like for example, Kristen Wiig, I know, or I read in an article that, you know, you had seen her tape, and I don't know if you brought it to Marcy, but you brought it to someone higher up and said, you know, and then to see her career and all the incredible things that she's done. I mean, I feel, you know,
with Kristen, I mean, but here's the thing, Kristen is Kristen. Like she's the one who's done it. I feel proud that I get to be like a small part of the foundation that like gave her, you know, the place to do it. But I mean, she's just incredible. You know, like the thing is like, I just helped support her. You know, I just helped like, give her the foot up to kind of get the place to do it. But I do feel proud. I mean, but I feel happy. Like I feel so happy getting to see all of my old SNL friends do all these cool things. You know, even if it's like, even the people who like didn't make it, you know, they only made it one season. Like, it's just, I always wanted everyone to succeed. So the fact that I get to see some of these people who only maybe made it 1 or 2 years go do like really cool projects elsewhere, it's like, because you hired them because you're like, they're funny. I mean, Lauren always used to say, like, if you get to the audition process, you're funny. Like, there's no, you know, if you're auditioning for SNL and you are on that monologue stage and you are doing an audition for Lauren Michaels and all the producers, you're funny. There's no second guessing that. It's just that, like, are you the right fit? Does it, all the other things, do those work out? But like, you're funny. And so you kind of always, it's been nice to see these people, or even the people we didn't hire, you know, like how many of them are super successful now.
I'm trying to think of some of the stories of people that weren't hired. You
probably
know.
There's a lot of like Jim Carrey auditions.
Oh, right,
and like,
right.
You know, obviously I think he's done pretty well.
Yeah.
There's plenty of people. And there's also some people who like, there's like lore, like Steve Carell, I remember there's like a rumor he auditioned, but then I remember talking to Steve and Steve's like, I didn't audition. Yeah. His wife was on the show.
Okay. Oh, I didn't
Nancy
know
was on the show, but he was not. But there's like, you know, there's plenty of people who auditioned, they became writers, and then you never really knew them, and then now they're actors.
Right.
So it's really fun to get to see people leave and do awesome things when you're part of the beginning.
So Kristen Wiig, I know you're close friends with her. You guys have gone out dancing or something, or she likes to go out
She's
dancing
definitely
with you.
my girl. Yeah, we love each other.
So 30 Rock.
Yeah.
You were a producer on 30 Rock.
I was an associate producer. I don't want to like be like I was like, running it, but I worked on it.
Tina Fey, who I absolutely adore, her older daughter and our oldest child were in preschool together for 3 years. And that was sort of just as 30 Rock was starting, and she and I have a karaoke problem like you have a dancing problem. So we had a great karaoke night, and Tina, she did like Bangles, Eternal Flame.
That's a good one.
Which was good, but it was not, her second one, which was Rehab, was incredible.
Yeah, she had to warm up.
She was excellent. I don't want to hear the Bangles sing Eternal Flame, but I loved watching Tina sing Eternal Flame. But then we did a duet, and I told her she could choose. She's like, what are we going to do?
Yeah.
And so she picked that. I was Lionel, and my husband was like, I've never seen something more disturbing in my entire life. I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, your excitement level. I was like, I was forehead to forehead.
What did you guys sing?
We sang Endless Love.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Endless Love.
I was Lionel, and she was Dinah Ross.
Genius.
Anyway, she's just terrific. And my daughter reached out to her, I don't know, a year and a half ago, and emailed her and was like, can I interview you for my school on Zoom? And she said yes. And anyway, she's just such a lovely person. And so talented. And she's another SNL, obviously, alum that you got to work with and see her, go on and do so many incredible things.
I mean, I came in to SNL, and there were so many like strong women leaders. Like I had Maya Rudolph, Amy Poehler, Tina Fey. Like and Tina was the head writer at the show at the time. So I got to really learn from some pretty phenomenal women when I came in.
Did Marcy also go work on 30 Rock?
Yeah, so she was an executive producer on 30 Rock.
She was an executive producer. Okay,
she brought me along, and Alec was there, and Alec,
right.
Tina and Alec liked me, and I kind of just came over and helped whenever I could, in any way I could. I always used to say like I was a job collector at SNL, and I kind of did a little of that at 30 Rock of just like, where do people need support and help? And I would just find ways, and I just like, that's fine. I got it now. You don't have to do it. Don't worry. I know you didn't want to. I'm happy to do it, And so I just kind of was a job collector in my early years at both shows.
That's amazing. It's such a great, I've been watching reruns because my kids have been watching it. I'm like, there's just some one-liners in there. And Alec Baldwin is so brilliant. He's just...
I should go back and rewatch it.
You should. It's like, I forgot. And Tracy Morgan, the whole thing is like, so... SNL, you mentioned that your husband was next door, and that your daughter was a part of the whole thing.
Yeah.
Like, what was it like being a mom and trying to juggle that with your work?
It's like you don't know any other way, so you just do it. I mean, I took like 5.5 weeks off, and I came back, and I just felt like I needed to be there. I felt a lot of pressure to show up, and a lot of pressure to like I had just become a producer. I had just become head of the talent department. It's like, I just felt like I had to show up. And so I kind of figured it out. I mean, I don't remember much of those couple years, like it was definitely really hard, and it was a hard time. I also soon after that, my marriage started failing, and that was hard. So it's not like I go back and be like, have all these like great memories of those first years, because it was just really hard. I was working constantly, trying to juggle being mom, trying to figure out my marriage and what was going to happen with it. And so, it was really hard. But on the flip side, I just did it. Like it's like I just didn't really think about it. And I was fortunate to have a great nanny who could be flexible, and it was hard. The hardest part, honestly, was that my ex-husband worked there, and when we were still together. And so we had this daughter, and we were both working crazy hours. And so in the beginning, that was the hardest part. It's just like, wait a second, we're both working 80 plus hours, and we have a kid, and we work the same 80 plus hours, and we work on Saturdays. Like, how is this going to work? Fortunately, Seth Meyers asked Kevin, my ex, if he'd go work for his new show, Late Night with Seth Meyers. When my daughter was about less than a year. So he left to go do Seth. And so that kind of helped us figure out hours. But that was,
I don't know. I feel like the first 3 months is like shock and awe. Like,
you
just don't really know what you're in for. And it's like, I guess the only good part in your case is that you're used to being up for, for a lot of hours, but then the days that you're off, you need to kind of catch up. And like, it's just,
it was just pure chaos. And, the only thing I look back on it and I remember, if I could go back and change anything, the one thing I would change is like, I was so hard on myself and I treated breastfeeding like an Olympic sport.
Yeah.
And it didn't work for me. Like it just, but I was convinced I could do it. And I held on to that and I ruined myself trying to do it and do it the best I could. And I did it for 5 months and it was pure torture. And I couldn't give her enough. So I would breastfeed and then I would pump and then I would, give her formula. And I did it 8 times a day and I was waking up in the middle of the night. And I would go back and be like, give yourself a break. Like, you don't have to do this.
Oh my God.
I would change because I think that would have given me a little bit more presence to not feel so, but I just was like, I do think there needs to be some sort of a come to Jesus for moms on that. Cause I had the same pressure and I had the same issues and I'm like, what is going on? I saw Brooke Shields and Blue Lagoon. Yeah. Like they're just supposed to figure it out and know how to do it. You're supposed to know how to do it. And well, let me ask you this. Here's the question. Because when I look back on it, I don't think it was about my daughter. I think it was about me. I was trying, I kept remembering like, well, 3 months sounds better than 2 months. And it was like what I want. It wasn't like, I wasn't like, oh my God, her health is not going to be, she's not going to be okay. I was just very much like, but when I say it, I was like more thoughtful. I'll never forget that when I had to go on a casting trip with Lauren and the other producers that summer. So I had my daughter in February. It was like, July. And I had to go on a trip to Chicago. And I was like, how am I going to, we're on buses. Like, what am I going to do? And I was like, I got to stop. And I remember going to, the Upper Breast Side.
Oh, I went there too.
Yeah.
I was sized. By the way, I have no shame. I could take my top off, right? I mean, after that experience of being measured by the women and the whole thing,
But going to the Upper Breast Side, where I'd been renting my hospital grade pump that I carried with me everywhere I went, and I remember going there and being like, "Hey, do you guys have any advice on like weaning off breastfeeding?" And it was like, and they were all like, "What do you mean?" And I was like, "Well, I have to go on a well, you need to." They were. I mean, when I tell you the judgment, and I finally was like, oh, you know what? You're right. I'll just keep doing it just so I could get out of the store.
Yeah.
And then I sat on the sidewalk and cried probably. But I just remember being like, this is crazy.
I can't believe the Upper Breast Side ladies turned I mean, I could see like the La Leche League or whatever I'd get all my information from.
Isn't that interesting? Yeah. It was and it was more than one. It was like, it was out of a
They're like, we fitted you. We gave you all the equipment.
You have the hospital grade pump at home. What more do you need?
Yeah, there is a lot.
This is a pumping podcast, right?
Yeah, exactly. We're gonna just take snippets.
Is there an ad for a pump we can put in here?
We should definitely do that. At least, we've both survived it. We both survived it. I'd rather be one of those women that gives birth with their doorman in the lobby again than go through breastfeeding again with all 3 kids. It was no fun. All right, so you did not have a favorite host. Was there one show that kind of like really stood out for you? Or at the end, you sort of thought, gosh, I felt like everything came together.
I would say the show that stays in my head, other than like the 40th anniversary, which was like a really, huge endeavor, but the show that stays in my head, and I'm not sure it's even for what you just asked, but the Betty White show, Betty White Jay-Z, I remember thinking I remember just being like, this is special. She was so special. I mean, Betty White was probably one of the most phenomenal people to work with and get to experience. And I just worked with, I always worked with the talent so closely. So I really got to know Betty White.
And how old was she when she?
88.
Amazing.
And she ate she asked for Snickers bars and hot dogs. And at one point she was like, can I have a vodka? She was, and I remember at I'll never forget it, the party was at a place called Doc's Oyster Bar, which I don't think is there anymore, in the 40s on the east side. And I remember being there and Betty walking in to the party and everyone standing up and clapping. And I I honestly got tears in my eyes. I started crying just thinking of how lucky are you that you got to work with this woman.
Yeah.
She's a legend. And I actually wrote her a note. There's not many people I wrote handwritten notes to, but I actually wrote her a letter because I felt so touched by the fact that I got to have that experience with her.
she was so funny. And if you look at clips, like, you know, even from before she was on Golden Girls and then all the things she did afterwards.
She was so,
Yeah.
but it was so effortless. It was so effortless. Every move she made was it just was funny. And also she was so kind and so, I remember when we produced the Emmys, and that would have been in like 2018. We did this whole thing of like having this like moment for her. I think it was the last time she was ever on television. We had her come out, and even just seeing her then, you know, it was 10 years later. Like she still was like funny and kind.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That's going to be part of your book too. Like I like, you know, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Just what makes a person impression, you know, these wonderful, funny and kind.
Are you writing this stuff down for me?
I am. I'm taking notes in my head. I'm going to get my Post-its.
Yeah, can we get AI to do something with this stuff?
Yeah, exactly.
Thank you.
So you leave SNL, and what was that experience like? Meaning, like, you get to sleep in. Your pace of life has changed. You've got time for your daughter, and then you're thinking about your next steps. And
well, I would say this: it's really anyone who's left a job that they've been at for a really long time knows it is like, especially. I want to point out, it was my entire adult life.
Yeah,
22 to 42. So it's incredibly scary. You know, it's incredibly scary. It's like your entire identity. You know, these people were my family and my friend. Like they were everything to me. And I was just, I drank the Kool-Aid. You know, I poured the Kool-Aid. So it was
actually you made it, poured it.
I was
and
like,
drank
you want some more? You're out. I see you're out. Would you like some more? So it was incredibly scary. I like, you know, I just was like, who am I? Like, and who are my real friends? And who, now that I don't have the coolest job in the world, which is what everyone always told me, like who actually still likes me? But on the flip side of that, I got my life back in a way that I didn't even know I was missing because I had never had it. You know, I didn't know people went to exercise classes on Saturdays. Yeah. I didn't know people I knew people went to brunch, but I'd never really experienced it. My best friend, Kristen, by the way, I went to her Christmas party in December, and she's like, you know, this is only the second Christmas party of mine you've ever been to. And the only other one was the strike, the writer's strike, because we were off in December. I just never went to weddings, parties. I just wasn't around. And so, you know, I'd say for the first year on a Saturday night, like I'd walk into the door to a party and I'd be like, look who's at a party. You know, I couldn't get over the freedom I had. Yeah. And I would say the biggest impact for me was my time with my daughter. I mean, obviously like my partner and my friends and my family and getting to go on trips and stuff. But like I never had dinner with my daughter. I never had dinner with my daughter ever. And so the fact that I was home, you know, and I remember one time, I'm sure, you know, she'll listen to this years down the line. I love that I'm telling this story, but I think it was like a year and a half ago, or maybe 2 years ago, I was like sitting on a chair in my apartment, and Maddie walked in the door from school. It must have been 4th grade, so 2 years ago. And they just started like a puberty unit. Yeah. And she walked in the door and she runs to me, and I'm sitting there, and she's like, Mom, like we have, and she's holding the book, and she's like, we have some stuff to talk about. She's like, she was like, girlfriend, we gotta talk. And I remember thinking like, I would have never been here for this. I would have never been in this chair. But the bigger thing is, if I had been in this chair, I wouldn't have been here. Yeah. Like I was always just like, I was in the wrong place. I was never in the right place. I was always leaving work too early to get home for bedtime. And I was always not home for bedtime in time. And when I was there for bedtime, I was just trying to get her to bed so I could get back on my phone because there was problems to handle. And I was just I lacked so much presence in my life. Granted, I had this great gift of this job that was incredible and gave me so many gifts, but I lacked presence. And so I'd say the biggest change in my life is like, I am present. I am here. I'm here with you. I'm not worried about looking at my phone. I'm also in control of who I work with and what I do and where I put my creative life force, and you know, and I've never had that before, and I get to choose. The power of choice is a tremendous gift, you know, and I'm extremely lucky to have it.
Well, I think anytime you kind of switch gears, particularly as you said, at a job where you grew up there, and so much of your life, I mean, most of your life is tied up in that because of the amount of time that you're there and all the effort that you put into it. It is so growthful to step out of that for a minute, no matter what you're doing, and sort of see put yourself in a position where it is scary and it is new, and you're growing from that, and you're getting to, have brunch on Sunday and dinner with your daughter.
Yeah. I think what it has taught me is this idea of like, we always want to like have it all figured out. Like it's going to be like, well, where are you going to be in 5 years? What's the goal? What are you going to do? And what I'm learning or have learned, and it's probably more like what I'm learning is like, we have this thing of like, oh my God, like what could happen? Like, what bad things could happen? And it's like changing the mindset to be like, oh my God, but I don't even know what could happen. Like, who even knows where I'll be in 5 years? And I had a good friend who said to me after I left, and he was like, you had one of the greatest jobs. You had like a quintessential, like once in a lifetime job at a once in a lifetime show. You can't compete with that again. Like you're not going to, like, you can't go remake that someplace else. So don't try. Like figure out what you want to do now and then kind of chase it in whatever way you want. I also have a friend who says, go where there's light and heat. Yeah. And you have to be present for that. And I'd say that's kind of the theme now of like, where is there energy? Where am I liking the way I feel, as opposed to like, what's cool or what do I have to do? I'm like, how do I feel? Am I feeling good with this person? Am I feeling like this is a place I want to put my energy? Okay, then I'm going to double click on it. And it might not be something I've never done before. And like, okay, I can do it.
So it's 2018. You're still at SNL then, but you decide to start.
Oh, Women Work Fucking Hard.
Women Work Fucking Hard.
Women Work Fucking Hard.
Which is, I mean, as we both know, very, very true. What was the impetus for that?
Yeah.
And you have a co-founder.
I do. So it's my best friend, Kristen. Honestly, it wasn't like, and I want to be very clear, Women Work Fucking Hard is really a women's community that's about trying to help women be better at helping women.
Right.
It's not anti-man. We love men. Kristen and I Kristen had her career was based in like finance and being on trading floors. So both of us had so many men who helped us where we ended up being in our careers. But it's really, we kind of realized that like, we're just not as good at it as some of the men that we were working with, of like really trying to think of like, how can I help the women around me get better? How can I help grow their businesses, get leadership positions, even just like, how can I help them in the day-to-day life? And so it was meant to be a one-off. We were going to have a party. I had a friend who was trying to grow a business in New York. Yeah. She was struggling. I was like, I can help you. I called Kristen. I was like, let's have a party. Let's call it Women Work Fucking Hard, and let's invite 50 interesting women, not our friends. Yep. And let's have them come. And what ended up happening is, with a lot of people walked in the door and they're like, why are we here? Like they kind of thought we were going to like ask for money or like ask them to join a timeshare. And at the end of it, they're like, what's the catch? And I was like, you know what the catch is? The catch is I want you to find 3 women in this room that you didn't know before and figure out a way you can help them. Yep. And that kind of like became the mission of just like, what if you walk into a room and you're not like, how are these people going to help me? What if you go into a room and you're like, I bet I can help some people here. And between your resources and your network and your brain power and your purchasing power and your voice, there's a lot you can do, And so it's just trying to help people get better at helping people.
You've been doing this since 2018, but you've had events everywhere. How often do you do it during the year?
The funny thing is we don't have a total system down. We do it when we want to. Yeah, we're actually thinking about Women Work Hard National, by the way.
Oh, good. Well,
it's one of our few. We just did one in Chicago. We are going to do one in Austin. That's our next one. Awesome. And we find events we want to be a part of, or we did a great holiday market with like 12 women founders in December, where we collaborated with a nonprofit called Shop Repurpose, and we got all these women to sell stuff for the holidays. And we just do events when we can. It's neither of us are full-time jobs, so we do it when we can and when we feel passion. And the great thing is it's just the two of us, so we get to make the decisions. And also, I'm highly aware that we have something pretty magical, and it's small but mighty. And I think scaling, a lot of times people scale too quickly and they lose magic. So I'm just like, we've got something good. Let's just be really thoughtful about what we do and make sure we can, whatever we choose, we can do it great. And let's not get greedy and like think we have to like open a clubhouse. Maybe that will be in the card someday. But right now we're just like, let's do what we do really well. And so we pick things we're passionate about and with partners we really like, and we do it. So Women Work Hard Austin will be this spring.
Are you still sort of sticking with the 50 women model, or is it larger or smaller?
We typically go bigger. I mean, now New York's up to 200.
Oh, wow.
Chicago was about 100 women, but it's intimate. We don't want it to be 1,000 people, because the idea is that you're supposed to like
meet people and connect with those people.
Yeah.
So in addition to doing all that, you're also doing a lot of speaking.
Yeah.
Tell me about that. So there's you have this kind of like sort of 3 tenets, or I'm sure you talk about a lot of different topics, but.
I mean, the big thing I talk about is like trust and connection, right?
Yeah.
Like I think the crux of what I did at my job for 20 years was like building trust. And like I had to do it really quickly. I had to do it really fast. I'd meet someone on Monday.
You have to. I mean, you've got the 4 days.
I mean, but I basically would
like
meet someone on
speed
Monday,
dating.
and by Wednesday they needed to trust me. So it's kind of like, I think trust is like, you know, at the forefront of what most of us do in business and in life. And yet I don't think we really think about it that much.
Yep.
So it's kind of like breaking it down of like, how can you build trust quickly? And the things I talk about are vulnerability, credibility, and adaptability. And I kind of go into like, it's a lot of storytelling, which has been so fun to get to do and be on stages. But then it's also like action items, like how do you actually do it? Like what is the like, give me something. Cause I'm too like practical. I'm my mother's daughter. Like you need to learn something from me. If I'm gonna do it, you gotta pick something up. So it's been the greatest joy. I've been like traveling all over the country, and it's also fun to do something that you're like, I made, like, it's like, it came out of my brain, you know, for so long, for so many years, I was like part of a cog in a machine that created something awesome. But like, it's like me, and I write it, and then I rehearse it, and then I do it. And I get to have like real impact, and I feel it. It's been really special and so rewarding. And it's something that I've always enjoyed, but I didn't realize I never thought I'd get the chance to do it like I am right now. And I mean, like the gratitude I have for it it's been amazing.
Well, by the way, that's the outline for your book, is you should structure it. You talk about the vulnerability, right? And you have examples like in your speaking, right? About
it's all the stories. And it's like things that and this won't surprise you, but the thing I talk about in the vulnerability section is all about how becoming a mother like completely cracked me open, and how before I had my daughter, I didn't really understand the power of vulnerability and what it could do for connection. And then having Maddie just basically like fully changed everything about me. And I kind of get into that, you know, that experience. And then Melissa McCarthy was my first host back, and like what that experience was like with her. And then Vince Vaughn was the next guy back. And like, you know, and so it's a lot of fun stories. And I require myself to be vulnerable, because it's like, you know, if I'm going to talk about it, I got to do it. And same with adaptability. I talk a lot about being coachable and like learning how to be good at taking feedback. And the same exact thing goes. That's not my strong suit. I've never been the most coachable person. And let me tell you something. I work so hard now on being coachable and always searching out for feedback on all my talks, and watching myself and producing myself and being like, you can get better. You can get better. How do you get better?
That's you do talk about that in your speaking, right? But when you go to do your speaking engagement, because I also I'm not. I think most people are not great in taking feedback.
By the way, it's like why it's the best thing to talk about, because every single person needs it. Like find me, you know, athletes are great at it, because they spent their whole lives, you know, since they're little. If you're a star athlete, you've been told over and over and over again what you've been doing wrong. And you can't be offended. You have to use it. So athletes are usually pretty good about it. But the rest of us, we suck. We suck.
Yeah. Oh, totally. So when you're giving do you have like, is there, after your speaking engagement, are you talking to people at the reception after, and they're giving you feedback, or is it like
It depends. I mean, sometimes I recently got like an entire Excel sheet. I got a 7-page Excel sheet of what people wrote about me, you know, and I was just like, let's go through it, you know, each line, let's read it. There was one time I did a Q&A, and in the Q&A that she asked me, she was like, so you're open to feedback from, and I go, yeah, if anybody here wants to give me feedback. Okay. Not for nothing. Somebody wanted to give me feedback.
Oh my God.
I was on a Zoom 3 weeks later getting feedback about that talk.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah, guy. And by the way, I really appreciate what he said something to me that actually made me change the top of my talk. And I think it's a really great ad now that he inspired. So you gotta practice.
You gotta put yourself out there.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is fun. I have gotten a lot of unsolicited feedback and solicited, but unsolicited feedback from friends and listeners on the podcast, and I am growing in that space.
Yeah, you know what I've also learned from speaking is that when you ask for feedback, to be specific, to be like, hey, don't just be like, what do you think? Because then you can really get anything. And but like, really like in the areas of like I remember once I was giving, last January, I was giving a talk to 2,000 people, right? That was big. I was like, this is a lot of people.
Where what?
It was in the city. It was
an auditorium okay.
It was like huge. And it was the day beforehand, and I was feeling good. I was like, I know this is good. I'm rocking it. I was ready to go. And I said to my man, I was like, hey, and it's, by the way, it's really vulnerable to like, but you have to practice. And they you're told to practice in front of people. And I was like, hey, can I do this for you? And he's like, sure. This is, again, the night before. And I was like, okay, great. And I give him a notebook. I'm like, write some stuff down, and I do it. And at the end of it, he's like, I don't think, whatever the title was, he was like, I don't think that should be the title. I think it should be this completely different idea. And I was like, but that's the crux of the entire talk is the title I just gave. And he's like, yeah, but I don't think that should be the theme. And I'm like, but it's tomorrow.
Yeah.
It's tomorrow at 9 a.m. It's 6 o'clock.
Oh my God.
What I should have done is been like, hey, if there's anything you don't understand, like this is what it's going to be tomorrow.
Yes.
But if there's anything, if I'm speaking too fast, if I'm speaking too slow, if I'm not enunciating, if you don't understand a story, but I should have been like, don't just give me like blanket, like this isn't working. Cause I was going on stage the next day.
Yeah.
So I've learned that you sometimes need to be specific about
what. So what did you do? What did you stick with your guns?
I was like, I'm doing this talk. And by the way, I haven't done it since. That talk doesn't exist and it will not exist again. That was a one-time thing. And I've learned now, like, okay, how can I make that one better? And it's all changed. But like, at the time there was no like, okay, we have time for a rewrite. I mean, you're going on stage in front of 2,000 people. I mean, God bless them.
We're going to talk after this about the book because I see this whole thing happening. But in your mind, forget about what I think. In your mind, what is next for you, or what is your next the next thing that you're interested in pursuing? Or
I mean, I think I'd go back to what I said kind of before, which is like I don't have it all planned out. You know, like I'm working on this documentary that will come out this summer, which I'm excited to finally like have it be out there in the world. And that's been by the way, if you had told me 3 years ago I was going to do a documentary, I would have been like, what? Like also same thing. If you had told me 3 years ago, I would have been speaking around the country. I would have been like, what are you talking about? So I'm realizing that like life is full of surprises and chapters. And so what I would say is like, I don't know exactly. I have been doing so many things I never thought I'd be doing. I'm coaching, I'm consulting, I'm right now I have a script I'm working on with one of my creative partners, and potentially a podcast because everybody has a podcast.
You should.
Book, who knows? I don't know. I actually don't know. What I can tell you is like my thing is like I'm working with good people.
Yeah.
Or I used to I get to choose my own assholes now.
Yeah. Yes.
Right?
Yes.
I get to choose them. I can do it. I work with many. But it's a choice I make now. And so I just am looking to work with great people and do things that bring me joy and I feel connected to. And so I'm not saying that to be vague. I'm saying it because it really is the driving force. I talked to someone today before I came here. I'm now like next week having a lunch with her and I'm like, I might be working on a project that I would have never worked on. So in left field, but I might be doing it now.
But it's all, what did you say earlier? It's about you said light and heat.
And
following the light and heat.
My friend Naomi gets credit for that, light and heat. And like, and really listening, like, paying attention. Like, and by the way, when I say that, it's not the cool stuff. I did all the cool stuff.
Yeah.
Like now it's stuff that I'm like, wow, like I get to use these skills and all these things I've picked up and put them to use in a way that I'd never thought possible. And that is really satisfying. People might not think it's cool, but I don't really give a fuck.
Yeah. Well, I think the other thing that you said really resonated with me too, is that, when you're part of, and you had this, as you said, the most exciting job, an amazing job, but you were part of a larger creative process. You were part of I think you said cog in a wheel. You're part of this thing. And now you're in a position where you do get to pick, what you do, when you do it, how you do it, and you're the one creating it, which just to be creative, I think is really not talked about enough, of the importance of that for a person to really kind of own their thing. Because when you participate in, and I've done it throughout my life, I'm a recovering matrimonial lawyer. Like when you work for larger, organizations or things, and you can feel great about your work and make incredible contributions, but you're still part of something. But this is something these are your projects and your
also
things.
They're mine. I mean, like it really is like mine.
Yeah.
It didn't exist before I did it. And I never realized that was something that I was missing in my life.
Yeah.
I mean, I was, when I look back to like who I was as a kid, I was always very creative. And my mom would tell you I came out like a little producer. I was like producing everything, right? But then I got to SNL and it was like I was doing a thing that I was really good at. But now it's just been fun to like be able to kind of like the world is your oyster. Like who knows?
Yeah.
Like, I mean, I could have a production company in 5 years. I could be, producing documentaries. I could be working at a company that I wouldn't even imagine. I don't know. I am open, and I am like, it's like a shoulders back, palms up attitude of like, I'm after good people and things that like fill my cup. And I realize that the fact that I get to have the luxury of choosing those things is incredible.
Yeah.
Not everybody gets that choice. I do. And God, it's cool. And I'm learning so much. It's just been like astounding.
Well, I think whenever you're learning, if you're learning and creative and you're pushing yourself, like that is really where fulfillment, I think, comes, right?
Yeah. And getting to be curious. Like I love, like I always talk about like the art of discovery, and like I never Google anyone. I don't Google anyone. I don't like, I'm just not someone who like, I mean, people will be like, you don't prepare. I'm like, I prepare enough. I don't want to know anything about a person personally, like, cause I'm like, that's fun for me.
Yeah,
the curiosity
to find
like,
out.
Asking great questions and getting to know people, and like, it's just so fun. So yeah, curiosity and learning, I think, are really like driving, and good people are driving this next chapter. And, one of my friends the other day came over and said, one thing we all kind of wish we knew when we were younger is that like life is full of chapters.
Yes.
And like we all think it's going to be, oh, well, the door opens and then here it goes. And it's like, and then it's that door forever and it's straight into the right. And it's like, it's chapters. And what I'm finding important is, and figuring out ways to put each book on the shelf and know why it's there, and love that book and appreciate that book and not have resentment or anything towards each of these chapters or books, but then able to move on to the next one. And it's not a total science. You can have wobbly days.
Yeah.
I can tell you this, like there were definitely real wobbly days, like the first year after leaving SNL, where I was just like, oh my God, like who am I? But now I'm confident in just like in the movement. I'm like moving forward, and it's exciting, and we don't have to have it all figured out.
No, you don't. But I think that's something that you've learned through your life experience. I wish I could go back to my 20-something self who thought I had to have it all figured out and thought there was a linear path.
Yes.
But if you're like if you're enjoying what you're doing, and you're, as you said, doing what you were good at, like there's a lot of positiveness in that when you find something like, I'm enjoying this and I'm good at it, but this doesn't have to be the last thing that I'm doing. And by doing that, I can take these skills and these interests and this love for this thing and translate it into so many other things.
That's exactly it. The other thing I would add is like, you're bound to make mistakes. I think that part, perfectionist and like people pleaser Lindsay Shookus at 22 could have used that. Like I would have liked to know that no matter what you do and no matter how hard you try, you're going to make mistakes and there may be people who don't like you. Yeah. And I could have used that little tidbit too. Yeah. I've done some high school talks. Yeah. And I definitely, those things are in there. Like that life isn't linear. And Because it's like, I wish I kind of, it's hard to maybe process when you're that age, but like I would have liked to just kind of hear it.
Well, I was never on Instagram pre-podcast. I had an account, but I couldn't figure out how to log back in. It's a whole longer story, but now now I've become like the queen of the reel, where I think I might have a problem and need to see someone about it. But George Clooney said on one of these reels that that he's like, you don't learn from the wins, you only learn from the failures. And I just thought that was so true. Like you said, the mistakes that we all make is where the
By the way, I have a
happens.
fun fact that I came and spoke to Jen's college courses.
Oh yeah, you're right.
I did that 2 years ago, and they have to write you letters afterwards. Her students all write you these letters, and I was reading 80, 100 letters, and someone quoted something in one of the talks. By the way, it was just talking. It wasn't a planned out thing, and she said, "I'll never forget that you said there's good in the garbage." By the way, and that is the name of one of my talks now, Good in the Garbage. And I would never have remembered it had it not been for the letter that I got from Jen's student I was like, oh yeah, that's a great, because I'm like, it is for my life.
Yes.
Everything that has made me better and change and grow and become the person that I actually really like today has been from the real muck, the terrible times, the times where I couldn't get out of bed.
Anyway, Lindsay, so grateful to you for coming on today. It was so great to talk to you. I could, we could take it out dancing and karaoke from here.
Let's have a traveling podcast. Yeah. Let's take the mics on the road.
Well, when you come to Nashville, or if you come, I don't know, you're going to Austin, but Nashville, I have a ton of ideas for you for Women Work Effing Hard whenever you want to come. But anyway, thank you so much.
Oh my God, it's been a pleasure.
I
what a dream.
enjoyed spending time with you, and I can't wait to see what's next.
Thank you. I can't wait to see it either.
For real. That brings us to the end of this episode of The Interview. A huge thank you to Lindsay Shookus for joining. And as always, thank you all so much for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, please rate and review us on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts. We release a new episode every Wednesday. And until then, this is Leslie, and thank you for joining The Interview.